Duh.
I'm Batman. Just kidding, everyone. I'm Kay Swope, and we are doing a review of the movie Batman, which, of course, I am very, very excited for. Full disclosure, Batman, my favorite movie of all time. That's it. Close the video down because that's literally all it is. Just kidding. We are going to be diving into the movie. We're going to be talking about the good things about the movie that I found, the bad things about the movie that I found, a few notes, anything I noticed as well that's worth bringing up. And then we're going to give the movie a rating on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being stepping on a Lego brick, 10 being Citizen Kane. So, that all being said, let's go ahead and dive right in and start by talking about the good things of the movie Batman. Before we do, though, I just want to state something very, very important to me, okay? I tell people all the time, this is my favorite movie, okay? And I tell them that. And they're like, okay, which Batman movie is your favorite? And I'm like, no, it's Batman, right? There's only one Batman movie titled Batman, and that is this one right here, the 1989 film, okay? That's Batman. Because let's take a head count here, right, okay? You got the Adam West Batman movie, okay, which is titled Batman the Movie. Then you have this movie just titled Batman. Then you have Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. Then, of course, you have Batman Begins, and then, like, Batman vs. Superman. And those are the only live-action Batman movies with Batman in the title. So, when I say Batman, there's only one movie titled Batman, okay? Great. Awesome. Rant over. Now, that being said, the good of this movie. The three leads of this movie, I just want to say, are absolutely phenomenal. We have Michael Keaton, who is doing a defining performance of Batman. And when I say defining, here's what I mean. I mean that Michael Keaton started so many Batman trends that we associate with the character nowadays. For example, he was the first actor to ever speak with a different voice as Bruce Wayne in Batman. He made his voice a lot more deep and groggy, if you will, when he was the Batman character. When he was Bruce Wayne, he spoke just kind of normally, and we see that carried on. Kevin Conroy, he probably took that idea to perfection. He would have been the next actor to even just play the character, honestly, after Michael Keaton in the animated series, and we all know how that turned out. So, again, absolutely defining role right there for Batman, the Batman mythos. So, great stuff there, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Keaton's Batman, by the way, love it so much. He is easily my favorite Batman. Maybe not even just because of Michael Keaton's part, but just because the way Batman is used and shown in this movie, I think is absolutely fantastic. I just love it. It's iconic. I love the suit, the iconic black with the nice big yellow bat symbol right in the center chest, the rest being completely black other than the utility belt. Absolutely love it. The design is beautiful. I know it's not practical, right? You can't turn the neck. We can make fun of that all we want. But the suit, beautiful. So that's great. Now, that's not so much a Keaton thing. That's more of a costume and design thing. But regardless, does great. Keaton, amazing in the role. Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Now, it's really interesting to think about because when we think of the best Joker, we usually think of Heath Ledger nowadays. And reasonably so, because Ledger's Joker was absolutely fantastic. I would probably have to agree that Ledger's was the best. However, Jack Nicholson, he left really big shoes to fill after playing Joker in this movie. Because the Joker in this movie is also very fascinating. Because this is one of the first times, if not the first time, we actually saw Joker. He's always had henchmen, but actually like mob affiliations, which is very, very fascinating to see. And Jack Nicholson just pulls it off so well. They give Joker an origin story in this, which is kind of interesting. We can talk about that a little bit later. But he played the character in such a way that was very interesting because he was still very campy like we know him, using joy buzzers, chattering teeth that, you wind up, things like that. But he still came across as a threat and menacing. So he did something that not very many actors can do, at least not do easily, which is be simultaneously threatening but also campy and comedic at the same time, which was very, very good, very, very well done. So, of course, Jack Nicholson, he left those big shoes to fill. Heath Ledger did an amazing job, too. Don't get me wrong. But Jack Nicholson's Joker, there's just something very, very special about that none of the other Jokers have quite been able to capture. And so there's just some magic in Jack Nicholson's version of the character. The third lead being Kim Basinger, who plays Vicky Vale in this movie, which I think is very, very fascinating because Vicky Vale's not a character who has gotten a whole lot of love or spotlight treatment lately. When this movie came out, a little bit, I know Vicky Vale shows up again in the Batman versus Dracula animated film, which I love that film. It's pretty great. But I really like the character of Vicky Vale in this. Kim Basinger, she does a great job, of course. But what makes the character so great is that she's basically like the audience surrogate in the film. So in a similar way to in the comics, when they introduced Robin to be the person who asks Batman, just so Batman can explain what he's doing, Vicky Vale serves a very similar role, but in a more updated context in this film. And I think it's great. Basinger does great. So yeah, very, very fascinating stuff. But the 3 leads for this film, super duper strong. Love them to death. Amazing cast. Something else I always have to mention in this movie, though, too, is the Batmobile that we get to see, okay? It is probably the most iconic Batmobile design that we have ever seen. I think if you ask anyone to close their eyes and describe the Batmobile to you, they're going to be describing this version of the Batmobile, because that look is just so iconic. Tim Burton just really hit it out of the park with choosing that design for the Batmobile, because it's absolutely iconic. It looks amazing. Not my favorite Batmobile personally, but it's the one I think of every time I hear Batmobile. And again, just the look is just, it's beautiful. It's fantastic. But you know what else is beautiful and fantastic? The score. The iconic Danny Elfman Batman score. Now, I also want to point out too, Lego Batman, remember that game, right? They use this score all over that game. And so when I first played the Lego Batman game before I saw this movie, growing up, and going into the movie, I was familiar with all of these tracks, as I've heard them before, from the Lego Batman game. So that was fantastic. I loved it. It's really good. Also, if it weren't for this score, we also would not have the Batman animated series theme music, because they pretty much copied and pasted the Danny Elfman score for that series. So you have a lot to thank. The greatest Batman cartoon that most people would tell you, being Batman the Animated Series. It has a lot to owe to this movie to make it as good as it was. So keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, because like I said, the movie's fantastic, and it really, really changed the Batman mythos in more ways. In fact, I would maybe even go as far to say this might just be the most influential superhero film ever made. I mentioned everything about Batman and Joker and everything. The Batmobile, of course. I'm sure we've seen a lot of designs that were inspired by this Batmobile. And of course, this score, you just can't top it. There has not been a Batman score out for any of the movies so far that hits just like this one does. I think you can debate that The Batman, the score for that film is pretty great, but it's still not on the same level as this iconic Danny Elfman score. So beautiful score. One of my favorite film scores of all time. So that is awesome. Also got to point out, this film was done on a Warner Brothers backlot somewhere in London, if I'm not mistaken. They built the entirety of Gotham City, all the streets and everything. They built that all, and they shot it live on site, and it is absolutely beautiful. And it also really lends well to the set-piece action we get to see a lot in this film. We get to see the whole awesome battle that takes place in Axis Chemicals. We get to see a really nice chase scene through the streets. And then, of course, in the finale, we have both the Batwing flying around the whole main street of Gotham. And then, of course, we have it crashing, and then they go into Gotham's Cathedral, which is great. It's just so cool. It's so not super dark and gothic, but just the right amount of dark and gothic for a comic book film, if you ask me. But again, beautiful. They just nail so many things in this movie. But unfortunately, they cannot nail everything. And so I know I'm super biased. This is still my favorite movie of all time. But even I have to go back and admit and talk about some few flaws that it has here and there. Or some things that aren't necessarily flaws, but that diehard Batman fans might not like, might not appreciate. Some areas where it fails to be as comic book accurate as it can be. And we're going to start here with the story. A couple of weeks ago, I was visiting a friend, and we decide, hey, let's watch a movie. And they let me pick. And I'm like, oh, they haven't seen Batman yet, so we're going to watch that, okay? And we do watch it. And going through it, watching it with them, they did point out some stuff that I've always kind of overlooked. But a lot of the things in the story, they just kind of happen, and you just kind of ask yourself, why is this happening? Like when Joker decides to poison all of the products and stuff, and you do that whole chicanery, it's like, why is he doing that exactly? I know like he's crazy. I know he wants to like paint the world in his own image, but why? If they're going to go through the part of giving Joker an origin story, they could at least tell us, because they do that in this film, they could at least tell us why Joker is doing what he's doing. I feel like that's kind of weird. It just kind of happens. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's not that it's hard to follow. It's just that he does the thing. He takes over all the mob businesses, and then he poisons the chemicals and does that big thing. Batman stops him from poisoning the chemicals. Then Joker gets angry, and then he challenges Batman to a fight, if you will, during the whole parade thing with the Prince music and all that. But it doesn't really, like, I don't know. Why does it go from this point to this point? I don't know. It seems a little out of pocket sometimes, so I do have to say that. Not the tightest writing I've ever seen, unfortunately. That doesn't mean I dislike it any less, but I have to be honest. And so, like I say, all the time. The movie makes me feel one way, although I do acknowledge that objectively, it is not as good as my tastes suggest to me that it is. There's something else in this movie that would be considered questionable is that they give the Joker an origin story. This origin story, though, does influence a lot in the comic world, right? Bring up the Batman animated series, because we talk about the animated series a lot, right? So in the animated series, we have seen glimpses, and they kind of retcon this later, but they kind of imply that Jack Napier, Joker, is the same name, alter ego, and everything like that in that show. And they also kind of sort of imply that he kills the Wayne parents, except they also kind of retcon that a little later on too in the DC AU. But the whole concept of Batman dropping him into the acid, that is something that's been ingrained in comics for a while now. And so it's very, very commonplace and very, very known. And I'm not sure if this film came first or if that whole Red Hood story came first, because I'm honestly not entirely sure. But what I can tell you is that Batman being involved in the accident that turned Joker into the Joker is something that we know from comics. If you're a comics fan such as myself, it is basically common knowledge at this point. So seeing in this film, I think it was done pretty good. I don't mind that they gave Joker a little bit of an origin story. I think it's kind of weird how he killed the Waynes. That is a little strange. I don't think it takes away anything, but it certainly makes Joker a little less mysterious as a villain, because the mystery with Joker is you don't get why he does what he does, which works really well in the comics. In this film, not quite as much, but I digress. A lot to say about that. The other thing I got to say, too, is in this film and Batman Returns, basically all of Keaton's Batman stuff, unfortunately, he is not afraid to kill people. He doesn't just go out and kill people unless you're at Axis Chemicals. In that case, sorry. But Batman blows that popsicle stand quite literally. And then he also tosses a guy down a bell tower and stuff like that, and just some other things here and there. He indirectly kills the Joker at the end because what happens is he's trying to escape. He's trying to go up on this helicopter rope ladder. He shoots little bolos, gets his foot to stay attached to a gargoyle. Now, if it would have just stopped there and he couldn't go up the ladder and he's just hanging from this gargoyle, that's not the end of the world, okay? That's something that he can be recovered from. Something that's not Batman's fault is the gargoyle then breaks off and starts dangling down over the streets of Gotham. Joker can't hold on. He falls. He dies, which is very, very unfortunate. But there's some instances here and there, but it's definitely very clear in this movie that Batman does not have the same appreciation of the sanctity of human life as he does in the comics. So, I mean, that's something that for me, I get and I understand why other Batman fans wouldn't like it. But again, for me personally, I don't really mind it that much. But ultimately, that's what I really have to say about this movie. There's a lot to go over, a lot to unpack, if you will. Really, the best way that you are going to understand everything I'm saying is if you see the movie yourself. So if you haven't, I highly recommend going and doing that. But like I said, okay, this is my favorite movie of all time. I think it is the greatest movie ever made. So it comes to no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, this may or may not be the only film that I actually give this rating to. But, ladies and gentlemen, Batman gets a 10 out of 10 on my rating. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I say that? Well, I'll tell you how I can say that. It's my list, and the movie makes me feel a certain way. It makes me feel like $1 million. Therefore, I know there are way better Batman movies out there. The Dark Knight is easily, objectively, the best Batman movie, and I don't care, okay? I love the movie. I think it's great, okay? It's a fantastic movie. Absolutely love it. But it does not bring, for me, the same type of emotion and feeling and experience that this movie does. And that is why I give it my 10 out of 10. But what do you guys think? Have you seen Batman? Do you want to see Batman? Let me know in the comments if you've seen it, what you think of it. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. Also, go ahead and drop a like while you're down there. That'd also be greatly appreciated. And if you've watched the end of this video so far, might as well hit subscribe because we got more videos just like this coming out. I got more Batman reviews planned. I'm also planning on doing a bunch of Superman-related stuff building up to the Superman premiere coming up here in July. So make sure you subscribe for more. Again, plenty more content like this coming down the road. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm K-Swoop, and I will see you in the next one.